It is a curious thing how the heavy silence of a central Ohio evening can carry the weight of 60,000 souls whose footsteps no longer echo upon the limestone paths. One might stand today where the great rivers meet and hear only the wind, yet in the stillness of the mind's eye, the shadows of the past begin to lengthen, revealing a world of patient husbandry and unhurried progress. The names of those who cleared the thickets and measured the furrows are etched in weathered granite, slowly yielding their sharp edges to the soft persistence of the moss. Welcome to the American Gazetteer. Tonight, we turn the pages of history back to Franklin County, Ohio, in the year of our Lord 1870. The territory of Franklin County occupies the very heart of the state, situated upon a broad and fertile plateau that serves as the gentle crown of the Ohio country. To the scholar of the earth, this region presents a testament to the immense forces of antiquity, where the great glaciers once moved with a slow and irresistible dignity, smoothing the rugged face of the land into the undulating plains we now behold. These ancient movements deposited a wealth of limestone, clay, and gravel, creating a foundation of remarkable stability and enduring strength. The county is bounded on the north by the quiet reaches of Delaware, on the east by the rolling lands of Licking and Fairfield, on the south by the expansive fields of Pickaway, and on the west by the pastoral stretches of Madison and Union. The lifeblood of this central domain is found in its watercourses, most notably the Scioto River, which journeys from the north and traverses the county with a graceful, winding motion. It is a river of character, possessing a bed of solid limestone that provides a firm footing for the many mills and bridges that have been constructed along its banks since the days of the first pioneers. Just north of the capital city, the Scioto receives its principal tribute from the Olentangy, a stream formerly known to many as the Whetstone, which flows through deep, wooded ravines and over pebbled shallows. To the east and west, the landscape is further divided by the Big Walnut, the Alum Creek, and the Darby Creek, each carving its own path through the rich alluvial soil. The soil of Franklin County is the pride of its inhabitants, consisting largely of a deep, black loam that seems to possess an inexhaustible vitality. In the river valleys, this earth is exceptionally productive, yielding bountiful harvests of Indian corn, wheat, and oats to the diligent husbandman. Upon the higher tablelands, the soil takes on a more clayey nature, yet it remains admirably suited for the cultivation of grasses and the support of thriving orchards. One might observe the Sullivan family, long established in the western reaches, overseeing the drainage of the lush bottomlands, or perhaps the Neal and Deschler estates, where the land has been husbanded with a careful eye toward both profit and beauty. It is a landscape of plenty, where the heavy labor of the plow is rewarded by a sea of ripening grain that ripples like gold in the evening breeze. Before the hand of man began its transformative work, these townships were covered in a magnificent forest of oak, walnut, sugar maple, and hickory. While much of this timber has been cleared to make way for the thoroughfares and farmsteads of the present day, significant groves remain, casting long, cool shadows over the quiet corners of the county. In these woodlands, the air is thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a fragrance that speaks of centuries of undisturbed growth. The census of 1870 records a population of approximately 63,000 souls within these borders, a number that reflects a steady and healthful increase from the decades of early settlement. It is a community built upon the solid foundation of the earth itself, rooted in the very limestone and loam that define its character. As we leave the tranquil periphery of the river valleys and move toward the center of the county, the horizon begins to be defined by the elegant spires and steeples of Columbus. In this year of 1870, the city stands as a beacon of Victorian order, its streets laid out with a mathematical precision that reflects the disciplined mind of the 19th century surveyor. The atmosphere here is one of dignified industry. There is a rhythmic pulse to the city, yet it remains a place where time seems to linger within the heavy masonry of its public edifices. The great intersection of high and broad streets serves as the heart of this municipal body, a grand crossroads where the commerce of the state meets the governance of the people. Dominating the landscape is the Ohio State House, a magnificent example of the Greek Revival style, hewn from the very limestone of the Scioto's banks. Its Doric columns stand in silent, unmoving ranks, casting long shadows across the wide, emerald lawns where citizens gather in the cooling air of the afternoon. To walk past its massive walls is to feel the weight of history in the making. Nearby, the Neal House Hotel stands as a monument to hospitality, its grand parlors and dining rooms often filled with the soft murmur of political discourse and the clinking of fine china. Here, the Neal family has cultivated a space where the traveler finds not merely a bed, but a sanctuary of refinement amidst the growing city. The mercantile spirit of the county seat is embodied in the sturdy brick and stone structures that line the primary thoroughfares. One observes the counting houses and banks, such as those overseen by the Deschler and Hayden families, where the wealth of the countryside is managed with Victorian prudence. These are buildings of substance, heavy oak doors, polished brass fittings, and tall windows that catch the pale light of the morning. In the specialized shops along High Street, the aroma of roasted coffee and imported spices from the grocers mingles with the scent of new leather from the saddleries and the faint metallic tang of the hardware merchants. It is a world of tangible goods and honest exchange, where a man's word is as solid as the masonry of his storefront. As the day wanes, the residential quarters of the city offer a different kind of tranquility. Along the shaded avenues, the homes of the prominent citizens, the Parsons, the Thurmans, and the Gwynns, stand as testaments to domestic grace. These residences, often built in the Italianate or Gothic styles, feature wide verandas, intricate fretwork, and iron fences that enclose lush gardens. Inside, the soft glow of gaslight begins to appear in the windows, illuminating heavy velvet curtains and the quiet rituals of the evening meal. The sound of a piano might drift from an open parlor window, the notes floating softly into the street to join the rhythmic clop-clop of a passing carriage making its way home. even in the heart of the county seat, the connection to the land remains unbreakable. The Central Market is a place of vibrant yet measured activity, where the bounty of the outlying townships, the fruits of the labor of the Miller and Smith families, is brought for the sustenance of the urban dweller. Wagons laden with produce, barrels of cider, and crates of poultry arrive in the early hours, their presence a reminder that the city is but a branch of the great agricultural trunk of Franklin County. This harmony between the urban and the rural, the stone and the soil, creates a sense of wholeness that is the hallmark of life in central Ohio. It is a place where civilization has found a comfortable home, neither too hurried nor too stagnant, but moving with the steady, reliable pace of the seasons. Leaving the brick-paved order of the county seat, one travels northward along the Olentangy, where the air grows noticeably cooler beneath the dense canopy of the beech and maple forests. This northern reach of Franklin County is a land of rolling elevations and deep, shaded ravines, where the soil remains remarkably rich and the pace of life follows the unhurried rhythm of the turning mill wheel. The settlers of these townships brought with them a distinct character, often rooted in the traditions of New England, which is reflected in the white-steepled churches and the precise organization of the village greens. In this year of 1870, the northern districts represent a harmonious blend of scholarly pursuit and sturdy, practical husbandry. In Sharon Township, the village of Worthington stands as a jewel of colonial foresight, its layout mirroring the townships of Connecticut from which its founders emerged. The Kilbourne and Griswold families, names long synonymous with the region's leadership, have maintained a village of exceptional refinement, where the red brick academy and the stone walls of St. John's Episcopal Church speak of an enduring commitment to both faith and intellect. One might observe the Case family tending to their expansive orchards on the village periphery, where the scent of apple blossoms fills the spring air and the heavy fruit of autumn bows, the branches low toward the dark earth. The houses here are of a dignified simplicity, often featuring wide, hospitable hearths and libraries filled with the leather-bound volumes of the classics. As we pause here, amidst the rustle of the north's ancient oaks and the soft murmur of the Olentangy, perhaps you might reflect quietly upon the ground beneath your own feet tonight, wherever in this vast world you may be listening. We are all but temporary tenants of the land, briefly inhabiting the spaces cleared by those who came before us. If these echoes of our shared history find a home in your heart, consider remaining a faithful reader of our Gazette. Such a commitment ensures that the names and stories of these forgotten furrows are never truly lost to the silence of time. To the east of Sharon lies Blendon Township, where the influence of the Westerville and Thompson families has fostered a community of high moral purpose and educational zeal. The village of Westerville, centered around the growing campus of Otterbein University, is a place of quiet contemplation and rigorous study. Its streets often populated by earnest young scholars and professors in dark frock coats. The architecture of the university buildings, with their tall arched windows and sturdy masonry, reflects the aspiration of a people seeking to elevate the mind above the mere toil of the field. In the surrounding countryside, The farms are models of efficiency, with well-kept barns and fences of split rail or stone that mark the boundaries of industrious prosperity. Clinton and Prairie Townships, hugging the banks of the Olentangy, offer a landscape of dramatic beauty where the river has carved deep valleys through the limestone. Here, the Hess and Webster families have established homesteads that command views of the winding water below, their cattle grazing upon the lush slopes that descend toward the riverbed. The industry of these townships is often found in the small mills that harness the power of the tributary creeks, the sound of the falling water a constant accompaniment to the daily labor of the miller. In the evenings, the valleys fill with a soft, blue mist that rises from the Olentangy, cloaking the world in a veil of quiet mystery and muting the sounds of the distant farmsteads. Further east, in Mifflin and Plain Townships, the terrain levels into a broad pastoral expanse where the Big Walnut and Alum Creek provide a reliable source of water for the sprawling livestock ranges. This is a region of vast skies and open horizons where the Smith and Headley families have long practiced a traditional form of husbandry that relies upon the natural richness of the bottomlands. The farmhouses here are often isolated, standing like small islands in a sea of waving prairie grass and cultivated fields, their chimneys sending thin curls of wood smoke into the clear autumnal air. It is a world of immense quiet, where the only intrusion upon the stillness is the call of a distant hawk or the lowing of cattle as they are driven toward the shelter of the barn at dusk. Journeying southward from the city, the landscape of Franklin County undergoes a subtle but profound transformation as the ground yields to the vast alluvial plains that characterize the lower reaches of the Scioto Valley. Here, the earth seems to exhale a sense of ancient fertility, a richness born of the seasonal overflow of the great rivers that have, for millennia, deposited their mineral wealth upon these flat, expansive reaches. In Hamilton and Madison Townships, the horizons stretch farther than in the wooded north, offering the eye a vista of uninterrupted cultivation where the sky seems to rest heavily upon the tops of the cornstalks. The air in these southern quarters is often still and warm, carrying the earthy fragrance of damp soil and the sweet, heavy scent of curing hay. In Hamilton Township, the influence of the Reeb and Fisher families is evident in the sprawling, meticulously managed farmsteads that line the river road. These families, having established themselves upon the most productive tracts of the valley, overseen the construction of grand, brick homes and massive bank barns that serve as cathedrals of local industry. The livestock here, sleek cattle and sturdy draft horses, graze upon pastures that remain verdant well into the autumn, their health a testament to the mineral-rich waters of the Scioto. Life in these southern reaches moves with a deliberate, seasonal gravity, dictated by the planting and the harvest rather than the ticking of a parlor clock. To the southwest lies the domain of the Big Darby Creek, a waterway of singular purity and legendary beauty that defines the borders of Pleasant and Jackson Townships. The Great Darby, as it is often known among the elder residents, flows through a landscape of remarkable diversity, where limestone bluffs overlook pockets of prairie and dense thickets of black walnut. In these townships, the Seeds and Chenoweth families have long maintained a tradition of stock raising, their names synonymous with the fine breeds of sheep and swine that are driven along the dusty pikes toward the markets of Columbus. The quietude of the Darby plains is profound, broken only by the rustle of the prairie grasses and the occasional sharp crack of a teamster's whip as a wagon makes its slow way across the wooden bridges. The presence of the Ohio and Erie Canal, which cuts through the southeastern corner of the county near Lockbourne, adds a layer of quiet commerce to the landscape. While the iron horse of the railroad has begun to eclipse the slow-moving canal boat, the silver ribbon of the waterway still carries its share of coal, timber, and grain through the southern townships. The locks themselves are marvels of masonry, their heavy timber gates and moss-covered stone walls standing as monuments to a generation that moved the earth with shovel and barrow. Along the towpaths, the Gantz and Stimmel families might be seen guiding their teams, the rhythmic splashing of the mules' hooves in the shallow mud creating a hypnotic, unhurried cadence that defines the very essence of canal-side life. As the evening shadows stretch across the southern plains, the villages of Grove City and Georgeville begin to glow with the soft light of oil lamps. These are quiet clusters of domesticity, where the sounds of the day's labor fade into the murmur of family life and the distant, rhythmic chirping of the crickets in the cornfields. The dwellings are sturdy and unpretentious, reflecting the practical character of a people who find their greatest satisfaction in a straight furrow and a full granary. It is a land that asks much of those who tend it, yet offers in return a sense of security and a connection to the fundamental rhythms of the earth that no city pavement can provide. In this southern expanse, the spirit of Franklin County remains most closely wedded to the soil, patient, enduring, and profoundly at peace. Turning our gaze toward the eastern horizon, the landscape of Franklin County assumes a character of gentle, rhythmic repetition. This is a region defined by the parallel journeys of the Alum, the Big Walnut, and the Blacklick Creeks, which furrow the earth from north to south like the very plow lines of the men who tend them. In these eastern townships, Truro, Jefferson, and Mifflin, the heavy timber of the primitive forest has largely given way to a mosaic of emerald pastures and golden wheat fields. The air here feels expansive, often carrying a cool dampness from the creek bottoms that settles into the hollows as evening approaches. It is a land of quietude, where the passage of the hours is marked not by the clamor of the city, but by the shifting angle of the sun against the weathered siding of the farmsteads. Along the banks of Alum Creek, the landscape retains a touch of its original wildness, with ancient sycamores and elms leaning over the dark, slow-moving water. In Mifflin Township, the Nelson and Agler families have long maintained their seats near these waters, their homes positioned to catch the cooling breezes that follow the stream's path. The creek serves as a silent companion to the traveler, its banks a sanctuary for the willow and the alder, where the soft splashing of a rising fish is often the only sound to disturb the Sunday stillness. Here, the soil is a deep, rich alluvium, prized by the gardener and the orchardist alike for its ability to sustain the most delicate of fruit-bearing trees through the heat of the Ohio summer. Further east, the Big Walnut Creek carves a more substantial path through the townships of Jefferson and Truro. This waterway, more robust than its neighbor to the west, has historically been the site of much industrious activity. Near the village of Gahanna, a name that whispers of the region's ancient and poetic past, the sound of the mill dam is a constant, reassuring presence. The Whitehead and Steigler families, among others, have seen the transformation of these banks from a tangled wilderness into a disciplined landscape of commerce and husbandry. The mills here, with their heavy timber frames and rumbling stones, transform the harvest of the eastern plains into the flour and meal that sustain the growing population of the county. In Truro Township, the village of Reynoldsburg stands as a quiet sentinel on the national road, that great thoroughfare of western migration. The Taylor and Reynolds families, whose names are etched into the very fabric of the village, have cultivated a community of remarkable stability and charm. The houses along the main road are often built of local brick, their chimneys glowing with the warmth of the evening hearth. Beyond the village limits, the land opens into the Blacklick Valley, where the soil takes on a lighter, more gravelly character, ideal for the grazing of the fine-wooled sheep that have become a staple of the local economy. The sight of a flock moving slowly across a hillside at dusk, their bells tinkling softly in the cooling air, is a hallmark of this peaceful eastern domain. As night begins to fall over the eastern plains, a profound sense of isolation and peace descends upon the farmsteads of Jefferson and Plain townships. The Havens and Headley families, tending to their remote acres, watch as the stars begin to pierce the velvet canopy of the Ohio sky. There is a great dignity in this solitude, the knowledge that one is part of a vast, interconnected web of labor and life that stretches from the deepest woods to the busiest city market. The silhouettes of the great bank barns stand against the fading light like silent guardians of the year's bounty, while the distant, rhythmic hoot of an owl provides a lonely benediction to the day's toil. In this quiet corner of the county, the spirit of the pioneer lingers still, rooted in the soil and the steady flow of the walnut-shaded waters. Leaving behind the undulating hills and the deep-cut river valleys of the center, our journey now takes us toward the setting sun, where the land of Franklin County opens into the vast and storied reaches of the Darby Plains. This western frontier of the county, comprising the townships of Prairie, Brown, and Norwich, offers a striking contrast to the wooded glens of the north. Here, the horizon retreats to a great distance, and the earth levels into a magnificent plateau that once stood as a sea of tall prairie grasses. To the early traveler, these barrens seemed a formidable wilderness, yet to the discerning eye of the 19th century husbandman, they revealed a soil of unsurpassed depth and vigor. A dark, rich mold that holds the rains of heaven with a patient and enduring grasp. In Prairie Township, the landscape is defined by its remarkable openness, a quality that lends a sense of quiet majesty to the daily labors of the inhabitants. The Postal and Gardner families, whose ancestors were among the first to recognize the potential of this treeless expanse, have established estates that are models of agricultural order. The thoroughfares here are straight and true, stretching for miles between fences of Osage orange or sturdy post and rail. Along these roads, one may observe the heavy wagons of the Clover family, laden with the bounty of the earth, moving toward the markets with a slow and steady dignity. The air upon these plains is often stirred by a constant, gentle breeze that carries the scent of clover and the distant, earthy tang of the marshlands that still linger in the lower swales. As we move toward the borders of Brown Township, the influence of the Little Darby Creek becomes apparent. This stream, a gentler sibling to the Great Darby, meanders through the landscape, its course marked by narrow ribbons of timber oak, hickory, and walnut that provide a welcome respite from the sun-drenched plains. In the vicinity of Alton, the Roberts and O'Hara families have utilized the well-drained slopes near the creek for the cultivation of fine grains and the maintenance of thriving orchards. The houses in this region are often situated upon slight elevations, providing the residents with a commanding view of their sprawling acres and the silver thread of the water below. It is a landscape that demands a wide-reaching vision, where the master of the house can look out upon the results of a decade's toil in a single, sweeping glance. The western townships are particularly renowned for their livestock, a branch of husbandry that flourishes upon the abundant natural grasses of the Darby Plains. In the twilight hours, the lowing of cattle and the soft bleating of sheep create a pastoral symphony that resonates across the quiet fields. The Sullivan family, whose influence extends from the city deep into these western reaches, has long championed the improvement of local breeds, introducing sturdy shorthorn cattle and fine-wooled merinos that are the envy of the state. One might see a young lad of the Alton household moving quietly among the grazing herds, his silhouette tall against the fading light as he ensures the security of the evening fold. This is a world of gentle movement and rhythmic care, where the welfare of the animal and the health of the land are inextricably bound together. As the last embers of the sun disappear below the western rim of the county, a profound and heavy silence settles over the plains. The wind, which danced through the wheat and corn all day, sighs one last time and then falls still, leaving the world in a state of perfect, unhurried repose. The stars seem to hang lower here, closer to the dark soil of the prairie, their light reflected in the quiet pools of the Darby. In the farmsteads of Norwich and Prairie, the lamps are extinguished one by one, and the residents surrender themselves to a sleep as deep and revitalizing as the earth they tend. Here, on the western edge of our gaze, the spirit of Franklin County finds its most peaceful expression, a quiet testament to the enduring harmony between the ambitious hand of man and the infinite patience of the great American plains. As the masculine labor of the plow and the counting house concludes with the setting sun, the focus of our inquiry shifts naturally to the interior life of the Franklin County home. In this Victorian era, the household is regarded as a sacred precinct, a sanctuary of refinement and moral instruction presided over by the industrious mistress of the manor. Whether it be a stately brick residence in the city or a modest clapboard farmhouse on the Darby plains, the domestic sphere is governed by a rhythmic cycle of duty and grace. Within these walls, the domestic arts are not merely chores, but a sophisticated form of husbandry that ensures the health, comfort, and spiritual well-being of the family unit. The heart of the home is undeniably the kitchen, a space defined by the steady warmth of the cast-iron range. Here, the Weaver and Baker families, names that perhaps once denoted the very trades they practiced, begin their day long before the first light of dawn. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke and the yeasty promise of rising dough. The preparation of bread is a daily ritual of patience. One might observe the mistress of the house deftly working the flour into a smooth, elastic mass within a hollowed-out poplar trough. Above the stove, strings of dried apples and herbs hang from the rafters, their fragrance mingling with the sharp, clean aroma of lye soap. It is a place of constant, quiet motion, where the simple act of stoking the fire becomes a gesture of providence for the household. Beyond the kitchen lies the larder, or the cool cellar, where the bounty of the summer is preserved against the lean months of winter. The Miller households take great pride in their stores. Shelves are lined with translucent jars of peaches, blackberries, and spiced pears, each sealed with a careful layer of wax. In the heavy stoneware crocks, cabbage ferments into sauerkraut, and pork is cured in a brine of salt and molasses. The management of these provisions requires a keen intellect and a far-reaching memory, ensuring that nothing of the earth's yield is squandered. This quiet stewardship of the family's resources is the foundation upon which the prosperity of the county is built, a silent economy of the home that mirrors the commerce of the high street markets. In the afternoon, as the heavier labors of the morning subside, the ladies of the Clark and Williams families often gather in the parlor for the gentler pursuits of needlework. This is a time of shared stories and quiet reflection, where the rhythmic click-click of knitting needles or the soft pull of thread through fabric creates a meditative atmosphere. Quilting in particular serves as a record of family history, with scraps of old calico dresses and discarded waistcoats being woven into intricate patterns like the log cabin or the Star of Bethlehem. These textiles are more than mere coverings. They are tactile chronicles of the family's journey, providing warmth and beauty to the chambers where the children sleep. The parlor itself, with its horsehair sofas, fringed lampshades, and framed lithographs, serves as a canvas for the family's aesthetic sensibilities and social standing. As the twilight deepens, the ritual of the evening meal brings the household together in a moment of unified gratitude. Under the soft, golden light of the kerosene lamp, the Brown and Taylor families gather to share the fruits of their collective toil. The conversation is measured and respectful, touching upon the progress of the harvest, the health of the neighbors, or the news brought by the latest gazette. The lighting of the lamps is a significant moment in the Victorian day, marking the transition from the world of labor to the world of the spirit. The flickering flame creates a small circle of safety against the encroaching darkness of the Ohio night, emphasizing the closeness of the family bond and the enduring strength of the domestic hearth. The day concludes as it began, with a sense of quiet purpose. In the final hours before sleep, the family may gather for a period of instruction or devotion. It is common for the master of the house to read aloud from the family Bible, or perhaps a volume of poetry, the cadenced words providing a soothing end to the day's activities. Education is highly prized, even in the humblest farmsteads. The presence of a few well-worn books on a shelf speaks of a desire to connect with the larger world of thought. As the embers in the fireplace fade to a dull, comforting red, a deep peace descends over the household. The domestic arts have been fulfilled. The house is in order, and the inhabitants of Franklin County surrender themselves to the restorative silence of a world at rest. The moral architecture of the county is built upon the dual foundations of the schoolhouse and the chapel, institutions that serve as the quiet anchors of every township, from the bustling center to the furthest prairie. In this year of 1870, a profound reverence for the cultivation of the intellect and the stewardship of the soul permeates the atmosphere of Franklin County. Education is viewed not merely as a practical necessity, but as a sacred duty, a means of refining the character and preparing the youth for the responsibilities of a growing republic. Similarly, the myriad churches that dot the landscape, their steeples rising like silent prayers above the canopy, provide a sense of communal belonging and an unwavering moral compass for the weary husbandman and the ambitious merchant alike. In the rural districts, such as Perry and Clinton Townships, the one-room schoolhouse stands as a symbol of local pride and democratic effort. Here, children of the Wilcox and Legg families gather under the patient guidance of a solitary teacher, their voices rising in a rhythmic unison during the recitation of the McGuffey Reader. The interior of these buildings is a study in functional simplicity, with heavy timber benches, a central wood-burning stove that crackles through the winter months, and a black board covered in the elegant flourishes of Spencerian script. Outside, the playground is but a cleared patch of earth beneath the ancient oaks, where the laughter of children mingles with the rustle of the leaves, creating a sound that is both ephemeral and timeless. The spiritual life of the county is as varied as the origins of its people, yet it is united by a shared devotion to the principles of faith and charity. In the village of Worthington, the stone walls of the Episcopal Church speak of a liturgical dignity, while in the surrounding countryside, the Methodist and Presbyterian meeting houses offer a more rugged, fervent expression of piety. One might observe the Beatty and Stewart families arriving at the chapel doors in their Sunday best, the horses standing patiently at the hitching posts as the notes of a familiar hymn drift out into the morning air. These gatherings are the social glue of the community, where the weight of the week's labor is set aside in favor of shared prayer and the quiet contemplation of the eternal. Education extends beyond the primary years into the halls of higher learning, which bring a scholarly air to the county's smaller enclaves. Capital University, established by the Lutheran community, and Otterbein University in Westerville, serve as beacons of intellectual light, drawing students from across the state to study the classics, theology, and the natural sciences. Under the tutelage of men like the Thompson and Sullivan patrons, these institutions foster a spirit of inquiry that is always tempered by moral responsibility. The presence of these scholars, earnest young men and women walking beneath the campus elms with volumes of Virgil or mathematics tucked under their arms, adds a layer of refinement to the rustic character of the townships. As the Sabbath sun begins to descend, the moral landscape of the county finds its final, most poignant expression in the quiet graveyards that adjoin the country churches. Here, beneath the shade of the weeping willows and the towering cedars, the pioneers of the region rest in a peace that surpasses all understanding. The headstones, carved from the local limestone, tell the stories of lives defined by perseverance and faith. Names like Gantz, Stimmel, and Hess etched into the rock for future generations to contemplate. To walk among these markers is to feel the continuity of the Franklin County spirit, a legacy of quiet labor and moral fortitude that remains as unshakable as the earth itself. It is a place where the clamor of the world fades into a respectful hush, and the soul finds a moment of perfect, unhurried repose. When the sun finally dips below the western horizon and the physical labors of the day are set aside, the inhabitants of Franklin County turn their attention to the gentler pursuits of the mind and the heart. In this era of quiet progress, recreation is rarely a solitary endeavor. Rather, it is woven into the very fabric of the community, a means of strengthening the bonds of neighborliness and shared heritage. The amusements of the 19th century are marked by a certain unhurried grace, favoring the participatory and the local over the mass-produced spectacles of a later age. Within the parlors of the city and the barns of the countryside, the spirit of conviviality finds expression in music, literature, and the simple joy of communal gathering. Music serves as the invisible thread that binds the diverse households of the county together. In the refined homes of Columbus, such as those of the Deschler or Parsons families, the presence of a Chickering piano or a polished rosewood flute is a mark of cultural attainment. Evening gatherings often center around the performance of popular ballads, operatic transcriptions, or the stirring hymns of the day, with voices joining in harmonious accord. In the more rustic settings of Truro or Madison townships, the fiddle and the dulcimer reign supreme, providing the rhythmic pulse for an unhurried square dance upon a newly swept barn floor. The melodies are often those carried across the mountains by previous generations, ancient airs that speak of longing, love, and the enduring beauty of the natural world. The pursuit of intellectual refinement is equally esteemed, finding its home in the numerous literary societies and lyceums that flourish within the county. These organizations provide a platform for the spirited discussion of philosophy, history, and the emerging natural sciences. In villages like Worthington and Westerville, the reading circle is a common feature of social life, where the works of Longfellow, Emerson, and Dickens are shared aloud and debated with a gentle earnestness. Public lectures are well-attended events, drawing citizens from miles around to hear a traveling scholar or a local dignitary expound upon the progress of the age. This shared intellectual life creates a community of minds, ensuring that the isolated farmstead remains connected to the broader currents of human thought and discovery. In the agricultural districts, the line between labor and amusement is often beautifully blurred through the tradition of the communal bee. Whether it be a husking bee, a quilting circle, or the raising of a neighbor's barn, these events transform necessary work into a celebration of mutual aid and social vitality. The Sullivan and Neal families, with their vast holdings, have often hosted such gatherings, where the air rings with the sound of laughter and the rhythmic thud of the corn ears hitting the wagon bed. As the work concludes, long tables are spread beneath the trees, groaning under the weight of cider, ham, and the finest preserves the township can produce. It is in these moments of shared toil and subsequent plenty that the true strength of the Franklin County character is most visible, a resilience born of cooperation and a deep, abiding affection for one's fellows. For those residing within the city's reach, the theater and the opera house offer a more formal window into the world of the arts. Performances range from the grand tragedies of Shakespeare to the light-hearted tableaux vivants staged by local amateur societies. These evenings are grand occasions, where the soft glow of the footlights illuminates a sea of silk hats and feathered bonnets, and the air is charged with a sense of expectant wonder. Yet, even in these urban settings, the atmosphere remains one of respectful appreciation rather than frantic excitement. As the final curtain falls and the carriages are called to the door, the theater-goers carry home not just the memory of a performance, but a renewed sense of the beauty and complexity of the human experience. Thus, in every corner of the county, the arts and amusements of the day serve to elevate the spirit, providing a necessary and graceful counterpoint to the steady demands of the Victorian world. As we reach the conclusion of our journey through Franklin County in this year of 1870, we find ourselves standing upon a threshold of remarkable significance. Behind us lies a half-century of patient labor, the clearing of the great forests, the taming of the rivers, and the establishment of a civil order that is as firm as the limestone bedrock of the Scioto. Before us, however, the horizon begins to shimmer with the first light of a new and transformative age. The iron horse of the railway, which once seemed a mere curiosity, now pulses through the county with increasing frequency, its whistle a clarion call to a world that will move with a speed hitherto unimagined. Yet for all the changes that the coming decades may bring, the character of this land remains rooted in the steady, unhurried virtues we have observed. The legacy of the families we have encountered, the Sullivans and Neals, the Gants and Stimmel households, is not found merely in the brick and stone they piled together, but in the very soil they husbanded with such care. Their names, written upon the land in the form of township boundaries, thoroughfares, and orchards, serve as a testament to a generation that understood the value of endurance. They built for a future they would not all live to see, planting saplings that would only offer their fullest shade to their grandchildren. This sense of continuity, this bridge between the pioneer's axe and the scholar's pen, is the true hallmark of Franklin County. It is a place where the past is not discarded, but is instead the very loam from which the future grows. In the coming years, the city of Columbus will undoubtedly expand its reach, its gaslights multiplying and its industries diversifying. The quiet farmsteads of Sharon and Truro may find the boundaries of the town drawing ever closer, yet the rivers, the Scioto, the Olentangy, and the Walnut will continue their ancient rhythmic journey toward the sea. The limestone will remain beneath the earth, and the seasons will continue to dictate the planting and the harvest. There is a profound comfort in this permanence. It suggests that while the methods of man may change, the fundamental relationship between the inhabitant and the land remains a sacred and unchanging bond. As the evening mist rises from the creek bottoms and the first stars appear over the Darby plains, we are reminded that history is not merely a record of dates and figures, but a living tapestry of ordinary lives lived with extraordinary grace. The quiet domesticity of the parlor, the scholarly rigor of the academy, and the rhythmic toil of the field all contribute to a collective story that is uniquely American and deeply rooted in this central Ohio soil. To look back upon this year of 1870 is to find a sense of equilibrium, a moment when the world was poised between the rustic simplicity of the past and the complex promises of the century to come. Our exploration of the American gazetteer concludes here, in the deepening shadows of a Franklin County evening. As we close this volume, let us carry with us the stillness of these plains and the steady pulse of these rivers. May the names of those who came before us linger in the mind like the soft echo of a distant bell, and may the peace of this unhurried world follow you into your own rest. The pages of history remain open, waiting for the soft light of another evening to reveal the stories that still lie hidden within the furrow and the stone. Until we meet again to turn another page, may your sleep be deep, and your reflections be as tranquil as the waters of the Scioto under a rising moon. Thank you for journeying through time with us. Rest well.